What's going on, everybody? Sam here with FinzTwinsTV, back with another video. As you guys can tell behind me, we're going to be spending this afternoon down in the painting booth. I actually have a white topwater bait that I want to give a shad pattern to, and I figured I'd bring you guys along. Hope you guys can learn something about how to paint this shad pattern. But I hope you guys enjoy this video. Make sure to go down and click that red subscribe button and stay tuned. Alright, so here's the bait we're gonna be working on today. This is just a little vixen, very common bait for fishing around here, so I figured this guy would be a good candidate who we're gonna get painted up today. Now there is a little bit of prep work you guys are gonna need to do before we can start painting. This guy already has some done to it. All we're gonna need to do is take the eyes out. What I do is grab a little fishing hook and then get it right behind the eye, and the eye will pop out super easily. Just got a little glue behind it, and then you're gonna get a 3M pad and rub this guy down, scuff up the original paint, and give our new paint something to stick onto. Now once you got that done, you got the hooks off of it and all the other little split rings, you're good to go, and it's time to get to painting. Alrighty guys, so we got my gun right here. I'm using an eye water brush, and we're gonna start off and we're gonna go ahead and put a base coat on. So I'm gonna be using just an opaque white, and go ahead and give that guy a nice solid white coat. Now I've got my PSIs pretty high on this, and I'm just gonna try and knock this out pretty quick. Make sure when you're going back and forth, you go one way all the way, and then back the other way all the way, and make sure the whole bait has a very even and solid coat. Go ahead and get this guy flipped around. I'm going to do the same thing. Now since this bait already had mostly white on it, you're not going to need too much of a base coat for a white base like this, but if you have something more fluorescent or your starting color is a little more out there than a white like this, you might take a few more coats with your base. Now I'm just going to go ahead and dry down this base coat. I'm just using an old hair dryer, put it on heat, and put it on low. Okay, now I'm just going to give it one more coat. Okay, now we just go ahead and dry this bait down, and we're ready to rock. Alright, that looks good to me. Now these opaque colors like this I'm using for a base coat. They don't take long to dry, so don't worry about spending too much time on the dryer. For those coats, just make sure they're hard and dry, and you should be fine. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and clean this white out of my gun. I'm just going to run some water through it. Every few times I might add some airbrush cleaner in there just to make sure my gun stays clean and don't have anything jammed up in there. Alright, now so for this bait, I want to have a wider belly on it, and it's going to fade up. I'm going to have a little more gray on the sides of this bait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix in some opaque white, and I'm just going to put a little bit of gray mixed in with it. Then I'm just going to haze that over both sides just to darken up the sides of this bait. Now I'm just using this little popsicle stick to mix this up. I didn't have much gray, so I went ahead and all I did was put a little black in there. Mixed it up. And you're looking for a very light color gray. Now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to haze it down both sides. Don't worry about the back, and definitely don't worry about the bottom. Now you don't want this to be a very solid and prominent coat. You just want this to look like there's little specks of gray around the sides. Alright, now let's go ahead and do the other side. Now more specifically for this bait, I'm going to be mimicking a herring. I'm going to pull up a couple pictures of a herring just to show you guys kind of what we're aiming at. Now as you can tell in these pictures, they have a purplish bluish colored back, and they're going to have a little bit of gold running under that blue and purple, and they're going to have a little more of that gold right there around the head. So we're going to do some painting and see if we can mimic that on our topwater bait. Alright, so now it's time to get into a little more detail on the bait. We're going to get in that goldish color, but instead of just using a pearlized gold, just kind of give that bait a shimmer. I want to add a little bit of this transparent sand color in there to give it a little more depth and a little more boldness. So we're going to shake this up, and I want to do about half and half of this sand color and then this pearlized gold. The gold's going to give it some shimmer, and then that sand color is just going to give it a little more depth. And we'll go ahead and mix that up. Alright, when I test that out, you can see it's just giving it, it's almost just like that sand color with some shimmer in it. Now I'm just going to run this goldish color right down the top edge of that bait. It can go down a little bit, but not far. We're going to keep it on the top, that top portion of that bait. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my PSIs down. And I want to try and shoot this in a little more thin of a stream out of our airbrush. Alright guys, now we've given our bait that gold shimmer down that top edge right there. Now what we're going to do is going to use this same color and we're going to run it right there around the gill plate and up to the front of the head. Okay, now we can use our hairdryer and go ahead and blow dry that. Alright guys, so now that we got the main portion of our bait done, we're going to go on to the back of this bait. Now I'm going to go ahead and start out with a gray, and then we're going to go on later behind the gray and add in some of our purples and a little bit more of our finishing details. So I'm going to go ahead and load up on some gray. I might add a little bit of black in there to darken my gray up. Then just run that straight over the back of this bait. Now once again, instead of just using that gray, I'm just going to mix my black and my whites together and get it right to the color I'm looking for. Alright, so I got my gray to where I wanted it, mixing up the white and the black paint. It took a minute to get to where I wanted it, but it's almost like a charcoal gray, but it's definitely on the darker side of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my helping hands just a little bit towards me, and I'm going to go ahead and run this over the back of the bait. And you definitely want to give it a pretty strong coat. You don't want to leave any white showing from behind it. Alright, so after drying it, you guys can see the color we end up with. We got the gray on the back, we got a little bit of that gold coming out right there under the back, and then of course we have the gold right there on the face. Now the very last thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of a purple hint to the back of this bait to match the real colors of the fish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the gray color that I was already using, and I'm just going to take some purple, mix that in there with it. And then we're going to run a coat of that right over the back, just one coat that will hopefully give us that little bit of a purple sheen. Alright, so now we got our purple paint mixed up, and just to let you guys know, we'll take a decent amount of purple paint and turn that gray over to a bit of a purple. Now we're going to ease that bait back over to the other side. And then once again, we're going to run our paint right down the back of this bait. This time, we're just going to do it one time and give this a little bit of that purple look. Alright, very cool color right there. Gave it exactly what I was looking for, and it definitely matches those pictures I had on my phone earlier. Alright guys, so we already have a super cool looking bait, but there are a couple little details I do want to add to it. One of which is going to be the scales. And I want to do that in a gray pattern and let that leak down through the purple down into some of our gold. Now this is not really something the fish is ever going to see, but it does make the bait look cool, and if you are going to sell your lures, stuff like this will add some cool detail to it. Okay, so all I'm going to be using for this is just this little purple piece of netting I found in the craft store. This is actually a very, very fine piece of netting, but I do think it also looks cool if you use a little wider netting. In my opinion, it really does not matter. Now I went ahead and I had to pour out my original mixture of gray because it did have that purple in it. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and mix up some more gray and try and get it as close as you can to that original color of gray that we started with. If you can't get it perfect, it's no big deal. Like I said, do get as close as you can. And just like last time, you want this to be on the darker side of your grays. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and turn my PSIs back down, where I'm shooting a very, very soft stream. I'm gonna take my netting and I want the scales to be going vertically like they do on a fish. I'm gonna line my netting up on either side of my bait, and I'm just gonna haze this across very lightly in random spots. Alright, I'm just going to use those two little spots. They're not very prominent, but if you do end up looking at the bait very closely, you can see those little scales, and it's got some really cool details. Now, one of the last things we need to do now is add the little black dot that's going to go right there behind the gill plate. And what I'm going to use for that is just this little stencil that I found at just your regular old arts and crafts store or hobby store. And it's got these little holes in it going up it. And I just grabbed some tape, the same stuff that I would use to tape up the bill on a crankbait that I'm gonna paint. And I taped up right around the holes on the stencil. That way, when I spray into one of these holes right here onto my bait, I don't get some of that black paint around on different parts of the bait. Now this is definitely a bit of a tricky process, but with precision, you guys will be just fine. I don't need a lot of paint in my gun. Just a little bit will do fine. I'm using an opaque color. A lot of people use transparent colors for details, but this is such a small detail, it's really not gonna matter. I've used both. Now I'm gonna turn my PSIs down to where I can make a little dot without having much splatter around it. Then I'm gonna take this stencil, I'm gonna put it on this bait where I'd like it to go, and then I'm just gonna spray inside of that hole with my black paint. Now one thing I do like to do this just to make sure I'm very precise is I'll just take a little toothpick like this guy right here. I'll dip one end barely into the paint like so, and then I'm just gonna dot that right where I want my dot to be, just right there. I'll let that dry, and then I'll put my stencil right around that little dot I made to make sure I have it exactly where I want it to be. Alright, so let's line this guy up. And make sure you have your stencil pressed on there pretty well. Very well, actually. Now I'm going ahead and I'm going to spray inside of there. There we go. You don't need a lot of paint, especially with this opaque color. It's going to be pretty dark on there anyway. Hold that there for just a second, let that paint start to dry, and lift it straight off. And that right there is what you're left with. Alright, we got that guy dried, and we're closing in on finishing this bait. Alright, so now we're going to take one of the eyes for this bait. Make sure you kept them from earlier in the project, and I have some 2-ton epoxy. This is a 2-part. We're gonna lay a little bit of this stuff out. You're not gonna need much at all. The only reason we're doing this, and to make sure the eyes don't come off of this bait, especially with a topwater bait that looks this good, you're gonna have some fish absolutely destroy it. Alright, so we laid out our epoxy. We'll go ahead and mix that up. Alright, wipe it off. take the other side of my little Q-tip here. We're gonna put some of that epoxy right there. On the other side of our eye, you don't need a lot. And then we're gonna place it right on that little hole in the bait, just like that. Guys, check that out. That bait right there looks pretty freaking awesome. Alright, so now we're gonna do the same exact thing to the other side of the bait, and then it's gonna be time for some clear coating. I'm gonna show you guys a little trick that I like to do. Now right here I have some extremely fine holographic glitter. I actually found this on, I think, Etsy.com. I think it's used for people's fingernails. I guess they paint their fingernails and put this glitter on it. But I found it, I knew I had to get it and try it out. So what I'm gonna use that for is to give this bait a little bit of extra flash. Now I actually use a spray-on clear coat. So I'm gonna spray one coat on this bait. Then I'm gonna take my holographic glitter and just use my fingers and sprinkle it over the side of this bait. That glitter is gonna soak down into that clear coat, and then I'm gonna put one more coat on top of it to seal it all off. And once we do that, our bait is gonna be completely done. But let me go get that clear coating process done, and I'll get back to you guys and show you the final product of our Vixen topwater bait painted in a herring color. Alright guys, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you guys like my new realistic herring pattern and learn how to do it on your own today. If you want to see more videos like this and potentially some videos of me taking this guy out on the water to catch some big bass, make sure to go down and click that red subscribe button. Leave a like on this video, and I'll see you guys next time on FinzTwinsTV.